Further ado, I will introduce you to our wonderful women's panel here. We have 3 women who have offered to share their stories with us, all at different stages in their life. And I will give a brief introduction and let them talk for about 10 minutes, share their stories, and then we'll open it up for questions after that. So first we have Kit O'Malley, who is an author, mental health advocate, wife, and mother. She's also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and you can find her at kitomalley.com, where she writes about living with bipolar disorder. And secondly, we have Aubrey Good, who I have the pleasure of working with on a daily basis. She is the program coordinator and social media manager for IBPF. And lastly, but not least, we have Claire Griffiths, and Claire is a mental health advocate and an actor, and she is also an ambassador for IBPF and the Quell Foundation. So, round of applause for our speakers.
Okay, I didn't actually prepare anything, so this is going to be off the cuff. So I think for all of us, my mental health journey started when I was an 18-year-old honors biochem student at UCLA. I was suicidal, and I had gathered all the pills I had in my room, which were quite a bit, and I wrote a suicide note, and I planned what time of day I was going to take the pills. And as soon as I did all that, I realized, oh my gosh, now I'm actually going to do it. I have the plan, not just the idea, but the plan, the means. And so I called a friend to come and stay with me, spoke to the RA, and I said, I need to see a really good psychologist today. And so I went into cognitive behavioral therapy to kind of break me of this suicidal ideation, and that helped me get out of the crisis. I continued with therapy through my 20s and went to grad school. I quit UCLA, ended up anyway, I have a long career path. It's very varied, so I won't go into that. But I ended up in my mid-20s getting a master's in psychology and working with severely emotionally disturbed children, and was doing that until a friend of mine died of AIDS and my grandmother died. Those were just triggering events. That, and I had a client threaten to rape me during session. And I got out of the session, but still, those were all triggering events, and I had another breakdown when I was 30. And at that time, for the first time, I went for medication. And the medication I was given were tricyclics, and they triggered mania in me, and I had a week of no sleep. And during that week, I was thinking in binary, which is ones and zeros, while simultaneously thinking about Christian mystics, which was something I had a particular interest in, and thinking about chaos theory, which is physics, which I didn't even know. So I was thinking about something I didn't even know about. So I knew I was psychotic. I knew that, and the thoughts were going so fast through my mind, I couldn't even comprehend them because they were going so fast. I had a friend who called my parents and said, Kit needs you now. I can't help her, she needs your help. And she called my priest and she said, go over now, Kit needs help. And the priest came over with somebody who had bipolar disorder, had me call my psychiatrist. The psychiatrist had me put on antipsychotics for 3 days just to stop the thoughts. And then I ended up going back on antidepressants, but on a lower dose. And they thought it was just triggered by the medication because I had not shown those symptoms in the past before I was taking that medication. So throughout my 30s, I actually went and moved back home at that point. My parents rescued me, which was wonderful, actually. I thank them for that. So my life took a turn, and I ended up meeting my future husband, took a temp job in commercial real estate, worked for a decade in commercial real estate, had a kid, was basically coping as if I was dysthymic, which is chronic depression, with antidepressants and psychotherapy. Even though I would always say to my providers, you know what, I am way more productive than most other people. I think I'm at least cyclothymic, which is kind of like a mild bipolar. Finally, when my son was about 2, I started to have hypomanic thoughts of euphoria, that God was calling me to one church or to another church, and I recognized at that time that that was hypomania. And because I was a mother, I knew I have to nip this in the bud. I can't, this is serious. And I called an advice nurse. She said, go to the emergency room or see a psychiatrist as soon as possible. And I, at that point, got a diagnosis of bipolar type 2. And tried to go back to work because I thought that as, or all of a sudden somebody with, I thought it was okay to be a mother with depression. But for some reason, I thought having bipolar meant that I would not be a good mother and that my son would be better off in daycare. So I had been at home with him for a while and decided to go back to work and put him in daycare. And it turned out he was a very high needs child and had trouble in daycare with his behavior. And a combination of me being a workaholic, hypomanic workaholic, in spite of medication, and my son acting out, I ended up hospitalized and have not worked since. I live on disability and I blog. I've been doing that for the last 5 years or so. And I do a lot of social media, sharing information about mental health. I'm very interested in research. I like to, share valid, good information. And I'm active also in NAMI, Orange County. So that's my story today. Oh, and I wrote a book.
Hi everybody, my name's Aubrey. I have a little stage fright right now, so bear with me. Even though this is my job, I'm still kind of like, why do you want to hear about my life? Primarily because even though I have bipolar disorder, I don't think I'm different than anybody. I think my range of emotions has a different depth than you, or for those of you maybe who have bipolar, it's similar, but other than that, I live a happy, successful life, and what I'm about to share with you is all in retrospect, of course. At this time, I didn't know a lot of these things, and I kind of want to explain why I can say I have a happy, successful life, and just kind of go over that briefly. So, basically, my mental health journey, from what I can remember, probably started around 9. I got menstruation around 9, which is very early. The hormonal shifts, I'm sure, triggered a lot of upset in my mental chemical imbalances, etc. Most of those traits I think that came out wouldn't look like classic bipolar. A lot of it looked more like OCD, ADD. As I got into my teenage years, depression was the most prevalent. At 13, after my father was arrested, I was misdiagnosed with clinical depression. Unfortunately, with that, I was given an antidepressant between the years, I'd say 13 to 16 or 17. And in that time, I was hypomanic to manic the entire time because the antidepressants set off the bipolar. I honestly can't say whether they would have found the bipolar a different way. Probably eventually, maybe when I was an adult, it would have come out had I not been on antidepressants, but triggered it, and unfortunately, at the time, nobody believed me when I told them I didn't feel well. My doctors, my grandparents, my parents, they all thought I was not taking my medication because I was acting so erratically. My behavior was getting worse. My dosage kept getting increased. I don't think bipolar was probably in anybody's radar, unfortunately, so maybe if it was, they would have recognized that right away. At 17, after an accident, I was in the hospital. And I was not trying to kill myself. However, the way it presented itself looked like that was the case. And a social worker came in and realized that it was the Zoloft, the antidepressant I was on, that was causing me to be so erratic. The things I guess symptoms I had at that time were I was apathetic. I was either apathetic or I was extremely the opposite, where I had such bursts of emotion, I mean tantrums, everything was the end of the world, raging insomnia. I would not go to sleep for, weeks on end. I would get 2 hours of sleep a night. On the weekends, I would crash and just sleep for 16 hours Saturday, 14 hours Sunday, and then repeat the cycle. So there's a lot of pressure with that. It was really hard to be a teenager and nobody believes you when you tell them you're not feeling okay, and nobody can really help you, or so that's how I felt. So a doctor or a social worker at the hospital said it might be bipolar, took me off the medication, and nothing happened after that because I was so traumatized for the last few years. I said absolutely no medication. I don't trust doctors, I don't trust anybody, I'll be fine. I ended up self-medicating from 18 to 21. Lots of alcohol, some substance abuse. With that, I was still able to be productive though. I was still able to live my life, go to work, go to school, do the things I needed to do, and then at night I would just get absolutely trashed, hammered, whatever, and repeat it the next day. So at 18, my grandparents, who saw that I was not getting better, something was very, very sinister in me. I had a very dark edge. I was very mischievous. At the time, I would have said I was fun. My parents would probably tell you otherwise. So they sat me down and asked me what was going on, and I said, I was unmedicated this time, and I said, I have no feelings. I don't care about anything unless I have an extreme surge of adrenaline. I was very impulsive, driving fast, getting in car crashes, going skydiving the same day I decided I wanted to do it. I was hypersexual, which had actually manifested around the time I was 13. And so, when I was 18 now, it became a problem. But I didn't see any issue with this. I said, it makes me feel good, it gives me some emotion. Even when I have bad emotion, it's emotion, and so I kept doing it. So my grandmother took me to a psychiatrist, and he said, you have cycling bipolar, and that was kind of that. There was no explanation of what cycling bipolar is. There was no explanation of my nutrition, activities, therapies. It was just simply, this is what you are, and here's the medicine that's going to help you. So around the time I was 20 years old, I became friends with my now husband, and my dad was in St. John, because he kind of came in. He was sleeping. Sorry. Anyway, so he really rescued me. He met a girl who was very broken, very drunk, very lost. So, eventually, we got married, and it was pretty hypomanic. I mean, I was not somebody who ever wanted to be married. As I said, I was hypersexual. I didn't like long-term partners. It was a shock to everybody when I said, it's time, I'm doing it, but I'm somebody who, when I get a thought in my head, has to go through. So, that's what we did. We got married. Here I am in San Diego. That's also what happened. I'll backtrack. When I was 17, I decided I had to join the military. That happened, so I enlisted. That's its own separate story. But anyway, so when I came out here, I'm somebody who functions really well under stress. My therapist believes my baseline personality outside of the disorder actually mimics hypomania, because I'm very productive. I'm kind of a type A person. And so it's not atypical for people to see me being a workaholic, for me to have my insomnia, for me to go all or nothing. And then also to burnout. Burnout is big because of this all or nothing piece of me. So my husband didn't quite pick out the times where I was hypomanic. He was used to that. And he was also, when he met me, I was a big drinker. So he kind of thought maybe it had something to do with alcohol. What he did pick up on was depressions. Right after moving to San Diego, he had to leave for 2 months. And I was here all alone. I didn't know anybody. I made the mistake of moving to Pacific Beach, which if you don't know what that reputation is, it's a party town. So here I was looking for friends who, I could feel safe with, and there's drugs at parties and alcohol everywhere. And, so 2 weeks after living here, I had a complete breakdown and was like, I want a divorce, I want to go home, I'm depressed, this just isn't right. But I'm also very good at hiding myself. So what I did was hide myself in my apartment for the 2 months. I rarely went out. I didn't really talk to anybody. I just laid in my bed on Netflix and ate in bed, never changed. And then in October, so 2 months, close to the 2 months being over, my best friend Abe came to visit me with his boyfriend. And here I was. I had no food. I was eating peanut butter and jelly once a day, every day. I didn't have any furniture in the house. I was in sweatpants, and I just could not keep it together the whole time he was out there. Also, some things were happening, and because I couldn't understand what was going on with me and what was going on with my disorder, I was making excuses for things that just didn't make sense. Everything was an excuse, everything was a lie, and it just, he's like, what is happening here? Why are you in the States? It's not you, this is not who you are. So we did that for a little while, and then eventually, I'll fast forward. Eventually, just one day I got to a point I knew I needed help. I knew I wasn't feeling right. I remember this bipolar word in my head over and over. I was like, maybe you should see a doctor. So that's what I did, and I was kind of at rock bottom at that point, and I saw an ad for International Bipolar Foundation. So I wanted to be active, make sure I'm still out doing things, because I had been pretty unproductive for a while, which, drives me up a wall, just the way I am. And so I started volunteering. And this whole time, I think Debbie and one other person knew I had bipolar. And there was just this one day that somebody walked up to me as a volunteer. She goes, thank you for caring about the bipolar community. Thank you for the work you're doing with the bipolar community. And it upset me so much because I realized she didn't know I had bipolar too. And it made me realize that this whole time I'd been kind of alone, and I finally had an opportunity to meet a community of people with bipolar. So I wrote a blog about it, and IBPF published it, and I wrote on my Facebook that I was at rock bottom, and I was getting help.
Very nice.
What I just want to end with that, though, is that I know it's not possible for everybody to come out and say I have bipolar disorder. It's a harsh world out there. There's a lot of, negativity, and sometimes you're not ready. But since then, IBPF hired me in January on volunteering, so I'm full-time employed. My husband, who's a Marine, is currently deployed. I'm living on my own, but I'm happy. I'm doing okay. I have purpose. I have relationships again. I've been reaching out to my friends. I have a great online support system. I actually met Kit on Twitter. So I have a big support system on the Twitter and Facebook communities. And when people say, how can that be? You don't seem like somebody who's bipolar. It goes up and down. There's no way to look bipolar. We all have, similar symptoms, but the disorder is as different as our personality. That's the big point I want everybody to realize. The way bipolar looks to me is not how it's going to look in either of these ladies, and my journey is not going to look the same. In some ways, I was diagnosed relatively very young. Most people don't get diagnosed until older in their 30s plus. So in some ways I was lucky with that. But also, I don't see bipolar as making me different, like I said in the beginning. I just view it as another part of my personality, you know. I don't know anything about you, but I can assume we have some differences, and maybe bipolar is one of them. Maybe you have bipolar. I mean, we have that in common, but maybe we don't. I mean, it's no different, and I think it's important for the world to see that if you have bipolar, I am what bipolar looks like. Kit is what bipolar looks like. Claire is what bipolar looks like. Everybody with bipolar, you know, with their own stories, is valid. That is what bipolar looks like in you, and that is what's important. And I hope more people realize that, and just realize what a positive impact it can be when you can walk out your door, and if somebody says, "Hey, why were you late to work today?" I have bipolar disorder, and quite frankly, boss person, I have depression, and right now I'm depressed, and I had a really hard time getting to bed. And not feel shame, because it's just something about you. It doesn't set you apart, it doesn't make you odd, it doesn't make you strange. It's just something different about you. So, that's my piece.
So I realized I should have been thinking about what to say while they were speaking. They're so interesting, I had to listen. So here we go. I'm Claire, and this is my story. When I was 12, I started showing signs of mental illness. Although I didn't know anything about mental illness, so I didn't know they were signs. I started staying up all night, every night. So vibrant and looking at the world, excited about everything, taking on everything, which was great. It was like a good part of it. And then I started the school year and I quickly crashed. Everything just was dark. I had that high energy, but it was used in like a dark way. I would stay up writing poems. And they very much resembled Edgar Allan Poe, like poetry, and it scared my parents because you don't want your 13-year-old to be writing Edgar Allan Poe. I suddenly started having panic attacks. I didn't know what a panic attack was. So I'd be in my room all alone, not being able to breathe, and it would last for hours. And of course, there's all these breathing techniques to get out of it. But I didn't know to Google how to get out of a panic attack because I didn't know what it was. And then the only way to get out of these panic attacks would be to self-harm. So starting at 12, I would self-harm about every night. I would go to school in t-shirts with the cuts all over my arms. And I never did it for attention. I just didn't know, I should cover this up. It didn't occur to me. I wasn't thinking straight about anything. This progressed and progressed and progressed. And we finally got a diagnosis. I was at bipolar disorder. And I was really happy to have that. That was really good for me because I have a name to put to these strange things that are happening that I cannot control. So I did the therapy, I did the meds. I was always compliant, always. Nothing was working, and it was getting worse and worse and worse until I attempted suicide. I was 13 when that happened. And the hardest part was getting up and having to go look into my dad's eyes and tell him that I was trying to kill myself because I did something to him that scarred him. When I told him that night, it scarred him and I could see it in his eyes. But I had to do it to get the help. So I was hospitalized for the first time, and it was really good for me. I mean, I wasn't better, but I was safe, and I wasn't suicidal anymore. and I kept trying to go through life. It was summertime, I was still manic, it was still dark, but it was a little happier, and I just kept going, but then depression came, and I was nearly catatonic. And more hospitalizations happened. One in particular, I was in the hospital for 2 months, and it was the type of hospital that you're usually at for 3 to 7 days. I set a record. I was there through Christmas. That was hard. And they were trying. I was doing all the therapies, I was taking all the meds. Nothing was working. No shift, nothing changing. So my psychiatrist suggested something unusual. ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, which has a really bad reputation because of how it's portrayed in movies and TV shows, which is not how it's actually done, which is good. But we were willing to try anything. We needed to try something new, and we did it, and it helped. It saved me from that depression. So I got out of the hospital then, thought things were going to be okay, but it still wasn't good. I still wasn't healthy enough to go to school. I missed 1.5 years of school. That was my freshman year of high school. And because I was out for so long, I lost all my friends. So my support system was solely my family. It's here today, that's who I keep looking at. So I just kept going to the therapy, I kept taking the meds. Sometimes it was better, sometimes it was much worse. I remember one day, I get this type of mania, or this state where it's a mixed state. So I experienced my mania and my depression at the same time. And it causes me to have this horribly uncomfortable feeling inside, like I have to walk around to get it out, but it doesn't get out. And so sometimes going for a drive would work, and my mom took me for a drive. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I decided I wanted a chinchilla. And I started screaming about how bad I wanted a chinchilla. And we had these things happen. Maybe it was a person, maybe it was something. In my head, it would make me feel better. It never did, but in my head it would. And I started screaming and crying and having a panic attack about wanting a chinchilla. And then I started slamming my hand against the window of the car and slamming it and slamming it. And I honestly thought it was going to break. That's just one day of my psychosis that I can remember. But I kept doing the meds and doing the therapy, and then I woke up one day and it was like, oh, okay, I think I'm going back to being a functioning human being now. And I was, and I continued on that path, and it got better and better. Then my mom found International Bipolar Foundation, and we got involved, and they asked me to speak on Capitol Hill. And I said yes, and I did it, and it was wonderful. And I've spoken for Sharp Hospital a few times. I've spoken at the galas IBPF has done. I'm doing a TED Talk in a month. I'm 17 now, and I tested out of high school because that was the only way I could get through. But I'm at Miracosta College, and it's wonderful. And my love for learning has come back, and my ability to learn has come back. And I'm happy, and I'm bipolar, and that's a good thing because it's made me who I am. And I'm thankful for every day. That's my story.
I was wondering, Aubrey, can you tell us a little bit about your military experience?
Do you want to repeat the question?
Yes. So I was asked about my military experience. So at 17, I had decided that I really wanted to prove something to people who weren't asking me to prove anything at all to. I decided I wanted to join the Army and, be like a tough chick and whatever. I don't know. It was the thing I wanted to do, and so I decided I'm going to do it. And I was 17. Technically, you have to be 18 to enlist, unless you have your parental permission. And so I hounded my mom and tantrums, everything until she let me enlist. I enlisted into the Army National Guard. Now, I'm somebody who I have a lot of racing thoughts, and I make a lot of plans 800 steps ahead. So my plan was to do the Army National Guard, which is a reserve position, and then get my contract picked up by ROTC, so I could become a commissioned officer and do 20 years in the Army. So I actually did create a plan out of that. What ended up happening was I got injured during basic training, and I hurt my back, and they didn't really take care of it properly. So that ended up becoming a festering injury. I did my reserve duties for 5 years, finally got discharged under medical retirement, and so my military career was mostly being the only female around 200 men, and you're hypersexual. So, wasn't that bad, guys. Wasn't that bad. I was very selective. But yeah, so a lot of parties, a lot of things like that. So that's really summing up my military career. So it's not really a great thing. My husband, on the other hand, is a lovely Marine, and he's doing a great job at it. So his career is much better. But yeah, so that's. But I will say, during basic training things, I think the stress, I do best under extreme stress. I always have stress, chaos, etc. It's when I'm bored that I have terrible symptoms. So basic training was a challenge, and it was the most physical I've ever been. It's, I had people screaming at me, saying horrendous things, and you have to get through it, be tough. So you hear about that a lot, actually, about soldiers or other military who are in the military, and it's when they get out that their bipolar shows up because they're bored or because they don't have the structure, the rigidity. So as far as actual work, it was fine. It was extracurriculars that were probably trouble.
How do you keep the stress and the high productivity and the work addiction from ramping you up into a high flow kind of team?
Is that for me?
Yeah, just
Okay. It took a lot. So over the last year, and it was actually just a year ago that I told everybody I knew that I had bipolar disorder. So over this last year, it's really been a trial and error period. So it's still tweaking things, but really it's just starting to pay attention to when it's burnout sign. That has been my biggest struggle, I think, is I do burn out really easily. I am a perfectionist, but I'm also all or nothing. So the way that plays out is if I don't do something well, I'll give you an example. College courses, if I get a B on one assignment test over, I have a tendency to drop the whole class over one assignment because I know I'm a 4.0 student and I can do that. So that's that extreme perfectionism, and then the all or nothing. If it's not all, then I quit, give up. The way I'm managing that right now is, fortunately, I work for Bipolar Foundation, so I have it. I'm very blessed, and I'm very honest with my boss, and I tell her if I feel a little overwhelmed or if I don't. The other thing is I make lists, and I list what's important and what needs to be done, and then I will have to look at the list and say, is this overreaching? Is my whole list filled, or do I have white space? That's something my therapist is working on with me, is keeping the white space. And just really turning that, I do need to be doing something at all times, but I'm just supplementing those things with calmer activities. Like maybe walking my dog now takes up a space as opposed to 4 hours volunteering at a different place, a different subject, etc. So yeah, it's just finding healthier habits.
I'd love to address this too. So your question was how do you balance the workaholism or the hypomania, and I just wanted to show how I've had a whole lifetime. So I'm 55. I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks, and I started getting mental health treatment when I was 18. And I personally have found that I don't do well in a work environment, or because I get overstimulated. And when I get overstimulated, I get hypomanic. And when I get hypomanic, then I start the whole cycle. And so when I have something like this planned, I have to structure in time beforehand to relax and time afterwards to recover. Because I know that the social stimulation of this activity will start ramping me up into hypomania. And then I cannot do the type of work I used to do. If I want to be a good mother, if I want to be healthy, I can't do that. Because I used to constantly overwork and then crash. Overwork and then crash. And that's just not a healthy way to live. So, and I part of me at one time felt guilty about it, that, like, for example, I'm on disability. But I also am always giving to the community. I don't have to, but I like to. I feel that I have a purpose. I kind of reframed my bipolar as God, making it so that I couldn't, so that I had to do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have a purpose, and my purpose is to educate and to help. My purpose is to be a better mom than I was maybe when I was a workaholic. And my son is high needs. He has mental health issues himself and neurologic issues like migraines. And it's really hard to be a mother of a high needs kid when you also have a mental illness, and it's genetic. So, and my husband and I brought a whole perfect storm and gave it to our kid, who's brilliant but has challenges. Yes.
Did that take you a long time to get to that place? How long did it take you to get to the place where you were okay with, I can't work, that doesn't work?
It's taken a lifetime. I had a psychologist who once told me, Kit, because even after I was on disability, after my hospitalization, I went to seminary. So I actually do think that God has called me in my illness. So I went to seminary twice. Each time we had to move because of my husband's career, and I would become depressed because the transition was hard on me. And so then I applied again, and then it happened again. And so I had a psychologist who once said, why don't you reframe this as a sabbatical? And as somebody who's very academically oriented and high educated, I'm like, thank you, yeah, that's a great way to reframe this. Because I never planned to be a housewife or a homemaker, and I hate doing that stuff. So that's why the writing fits for me, because I write when I can. I don't write when other people want me to. I write when I need to. And there are times when I cannot do verbal stuff, and I just do jigsaw puzzles or art, or, I do what I need to do to take care of myself and my family. It's not an easy thing. Yes.
So with the crazy turns of hypomania and not being passionate about everything in the world, how do you kind of trust your own decision making when you're so used to the roller coaster?
So I think you need feedback. She asked how
Trust your own decision making with hypomania.
how you can trust your own decision with hypomania. So I have a good example of this, and kind of comes into, I get lofty ideas too, and I think I'm like superwoman and can do whatever. And I think part of it is accepting feedback from the people you're around. I, for a long time, was very invested in Middle Eastern affairs, particularly refugees, which is something I had to admit is just way too much for my mental state. It burned me out it triggered me, etc. But anyway, so I saw an ad one time that said adopt a Syrian family. And I was like, cool, let's do it. My husband was like, absolutely not. We were having financial issues. So I did it, didn't tell him. And then I got an email that said, congratulations, you have a family of 9. Yeah, so he was like, you've kind of put yourself where we can't back out. So he helped me with it, but that was an example of him being like, in the future, when I tell you your idea seems odd, you know, you really need to listen to my feedback. So since then I've learned I can't always trust myself. And that's why you have to be open with the people in your support system, because they're gonna tell you when you don't notice things. I mean, I don't notice if I'm getting hypomanic always until it's too, like it's already there. But my mom will say, hey, you're speaking so fast, or you're really dwelling on this idea, getting, you know, impulsive or things like that. And that is my stopping point.
I'm sorry. I wanted to back up. I totally agree with Aubrey that it's your support system, your family, your partner is super important, that you have really good communication and you listen to them because they observe you and they notice the difference. But I also think that in doing first, you know, the cognitive behavioral therapy and also insight-oriented therapy, over time you develop insight into your own process and you recognize symptoms yourself. So that there's a lot of my stuff just happens in my head. Okay, so really nobody knows. Okay, I'm the only one who knows what's going on in my head. And so I recognize the symptoms. I recognize what's going on. I tell people what's going on. And it's because I've done a lot of work in therapy. I've been in therapy since I was 18. Okay, and that work has enabled me to be able to do my own reality testing. And to just, and there is this gray area. Like, you know, how do I trust that God's calling me to something when that's a symptom of mania, you know? That's why I didn't go into the seminary until I was in my 40s, even though I felt the thing when I was in my 20s, okay? Because it's possible, it's a hard thing to discern.
For me, it's very much just trusting myself and how I feel about it. Obviously, when I'm very manic or depressed, it's visible. But I have to pay attention to myself and question what I do. And it's been a pretty good system for me. And especially when I was just getting stable, I did it all the time, questioned every action to make sure it was thought through correctly. But then, now that I've been stable for a couple years, and I noticed I was still doing it to that level, and that extent. And I realized I was cutting off some of what my personality actually is, because I was too focused on it. So that's actually a recent achievement of mine. Just letting myself be my full vibrant personality and trusting that I will know the difference when it becomes hypomania and when it's just me.
I was wondering if you're still having ECT, is it a lifelong thing? And also the 3 panelists are currently taking medication and your thoughts about medication.
Yeah, I'm not currently having ECT. So if you have bipolar disorder, it's usually used for depression. So when you're in mania, they won't use it because it could actually make the mania worse. And some people have it very frequently for depression. But me, I just needed that one time because it was so bad. And I'm taking medication, and I'll probably be taking medication my whole life. And that's just how it's going to be. And it's not holding me back from anything. And it's keeping me healthy.
Real quick, is there a way we can find out when you do your TED Talk?
Yeah, August 25th, North Coast Rep.
There's
TEDx Solana Beach. There's a website. If you look up TEDx Solana Beach,
TEDx Salon Beach?
yes, August 25th.
So Claire, wait a minute. You take your medicine, you feel good, but there are those days when you feel the mood change, and what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever feel it to the full extent of before. There's like, still in the fall and winter, I get a little bit more depressed. But it's not like debilitating like anymore. And then my mania in the summer goes up a little bit, but it's not like I'm all over the place. It's just I know that it's there, and so I have to work around it and keep going and trust that it won't get worse because it kind of just stays in these little bits.
I'm on medication also. I know that it's significantly changed my life. So I have some physical side effects to what I'm currently taking. Because my husband's deployed, my doctor doesn't want to switch it because I've gone off medication once before and had psychosis from it. So we're gonna wait. But so what I've done in the meantime is changed my whole lifestyle to make this medicine okay. So I had like 40 pounds weight gain. So I guess I gotta start exercising now, eating better, things like that. So yeah, I do think medication is important, and I do have ups and downs. Just a month ago, I looked at my mood tracking chart that the therapist gave me, and in 1 month, I was in a different mood state every week. I rapid cycle, so it was hypomanic, depressed, stable, hypomanic, back to stable, and it was just, there was a lot going on, and I wasn't taking as much care as I should have been probably with my home life. Long story short, when your husband employs you to do everything by yourself, it's terrible. So, so more of that stuff was going on, and I was a little bit off, but it was not nearly, it wasn't debilitating like Claire said. I mean, I'm still functioning, and you just have to take a little extra caution during that time to make sure it doesn't become debilitating.
Yes, I take medication. It's a lifesaver. It took a lot of trial and error to get me stable, but I've been stable on the same regimen for a long time. I do have, the same seasonal, changes. The spring triggers hypomania, and so I know it, and I know just to allow for it and kind of take care of myself. And I know that when it gets darker, I'm going to be more depressed. And so that's a matter of just taking care of yourself, because the medication can't get rid of all symptoms. So, but I'm pretty stable actually. I just have to take care of knowing what my triggers are, knowing what I need to do to take care of myself. There are things I can do better, like I've had a lot of stuff going on recently in my life in the last couple of years, so I've gained weight. I was doing really well before, what I ate and how I exercised. But I'm kind of like, listen, I'm going to be 55 and I have a lot of crap going on in my life right now, so if I want to eat this cake, I'm going to eat this cake.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I feel perfectly fine with the way I look. And I know I could be healthier, and now I have to take drugs for my cholesterol, but I'll just take the cholesterol meds, because I'm going to live. So that's, you have to treat yourself well. And you can't be perfect. There's things you should do. Yes, and exercise is definitely beneficial, not over-exercise. There are people who, in a manic state, overdo it, but exercise, moderate exercise, is very good for bipolar disorder, for depression, for everybody, for our health. And eating well, is good for everybody. Our gut health and our brain health are interrelated. Our bodies, our brains are not independent of our body. But you know what? You just do what you can. Any other questions?
Are you members of support groups?
And are we members of support groups? I do a lot of my support online because I have a lot of friends online through my blogging and stuff like that. I've been to support groups, And honestly, didn't feel comfortable because some of the support groups aren't led by clinicians, and I'm a clinician. I don't practice, but I get worried about boundaries. So some support groups are really well led, and others you kind of worry about whether the boundaries are being respected by members of the group. It depends. So, but they can be very helpful. So I don't mean to poo-poo them, but they're very helpful to people. But I do mine online. I have problems with boundaries, so I prefer to kind of keep myself at a distance. Support groups.
I began my journey with support groups because my VA doctor was like, "Why are you so opposed to your diagnosis?" Because I didn't know anybody with it at the time. I do now, but I was like, "This isn't me. Like, this is not my problem. I don't know what you're talking about. I've seen the movies. I'm not like that." And they were like, "You need to go to support groups." So I was with a bunch of other veterans who were, all along the spectrum, bipolar. Some people have years of stability and then years they're under or they're up or, changes. So I got to meet people in all different states, and it was really eye-opening. That was the first time I was like, oh, look, I'm actually normal. It was pretty interesting to feel like that. Currently not any because of the nature of my job. It's probably not healthy for me to be too immersed and have my entire life be bipolar related. But I do have a personal Twitter account now where I foster a lot of conversations and I've met a lot of people that way. And when people seek help and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" or "Hey, I just want to talk," I know what it's like to not have anybody to talk to. So I make sure to answer every single person at some point, and if I don't have time for them then, I'll say, "Hey, message me back tomorrow, let's chat." I hook them up with IBPF resources, and that's just having dialogue. So I kind of feel like I'm constantly in support,
When I was very sick, there's no way I could have gone into one of the support groups. Now I'm not part of one either. That's more because I become a therapist. I don't know, people just see me and they're like, "Oh, you can help me with all my problems," and I can't, and then that becomes what it's about, and I'm not getting the help I need there. But I do see a therapist, I see her all the time. She's wonderful, and I have my family, and that's how I get my support.
I have done group therapy too, and anybody who's been hospitalized has done group therapy while they were hospitalized, and I've also done group therapy outpatient. There's a difference between having a support group, and this is my bias. There's a difference between having a support group that's a clinician-led or a trained support group leader-led. You've really got to have somebody who's been trained and who's good at setting limits to make sure that that somebody doesn't get sucked, because I do that too, sucked into the role of taking care of other people. There are those of us who just, that's our personality, and that's our, and it's very important that we don't do that. It's not good for us.
Have you experienced jealousy of other friends, let's say from college or high school, who went on and got married and have maybe 3, 4, or 5 kids or something, and it just seemed like they didn't get the illness. It just seems like everything was so great and perfect with them. Do you have to go through that?
I'm going to say what the question was, and I'll hand it over. Do you ever get jealous of people that friends who went on to get married and have kids and have a life that you haven't been able to have because of your illness? I always thought my whole life, my parents introduced me as, this is Kit, she's going to go to Harvard Medical School and become a doctor. Okay, because I was really smart. I was like the little smart kids. And I always assumed I would be a doctor. And I would have a man. And my life is not what I thought it would be. And that was hard. But it's been harder for me to cope with my own expectations and my own internalized stigma, like my stigma that when I told you that I didn't think I'd be a good mom. Because that was me. That wasn't, I don't think I personally haven't felt, but it's just my personality. That I haven't felt jealous of other people. In terms of being a mom, I feel like a complete failure sometimes. Yeah, it's hard.
Being jealous is part of the reason I got married a year after starting dating my husband. Don't get me wrong, I love him, best choice of my life. But yeah, I saw other people around me getting married quick and things like that, and definitely it pushed me in that direction. I think I noticed that my husband was different than any other guy I had been with, and that made a big difference. I don't think it would have happened with any man, don't get me wrong, but I really ramped up. Like, let's just solidify this, make it official. And so when I was younger, yes, I had a huge jealousy problem. I was very competitive. I still am competitive, but I think it's healthy now, I hope. But once I kind of came out about having bipolar, I started listening to what my friends think about me, because I think when you're in your bipolar states, you really have this inner self-talk that's out of touch with reality and how others perceive you. And so a couple of my friends said things like, Aubrey, your life is so perfect. Or people tell me how spoiled I am, or all these things. And I'm like, what? And then I almost got offended, like, I have a bipolar disorder. My life is terrible. And they're like, no, you really, so after that, and as I mentioned earlier, once I kind of started to think, like, there's really nothing different than me. In the grand scheme of things, I just have something different than whatever, other people have. I stopped competing because it was pointless. I mean, competing with somebody because they're married and have kids, that doesn't actually have anything to do with bipolar. Because plenty of bipolar people are married and have kids, and it's wonderful. I think that's just something we tell ourselves, and we live in such a competitive, like, social media driven, when I started seeing that a lot of my friends have horrible marriages, but their social media was perfect, and I'm telling my husband, like, we need to work on things. He's like, if all things were good. You have to really gauge why it is you're competing. And when I stopped looking for things that I didn't actually need, they came to me. And it was a lot healthier because I wasn't forcing it out of this low self-esteem because I have bipolar.
I would say for myself that when I was really, really sick, like 13, 14, and I'm alone in my room, I have an iPhone, I haven't texted anyone in like 2 years, like I didn't have friends, but I see on Instagram and Snapchat, everyone I used to know having fun, going to dances, like going on dates, like it made me insanely jealous. I was really upset about it. But then once I was stable, I noticed that now it's more internal stuff, like you said. It's not what other people have. It's like my own, like, I feel like I kind of lost my childhood because I had to grow up so fast. And I mourn that, but I don't feel outwardly jealous towards other people about it. It's like my own internal thing. And I'll have to eventually let it go, but for now I'm still holding on to it. I'm 17.
Yeah, it's part of the coming to, there's a process of bereavement that you go through when you come to accept your diagnosis, living with a diagnosis, that your life might not be what you thought it would be, but it doesn't mean that your life doesn't have purpose, or that you aren't worthwhile, or that you aren't worthy of being loved or loving. And those are the most important things. The things about achievements and all that other stuff doesn't really matter. Like, we all have reframed our lives, right? Like, completely reframed what was meaningful in our lives and what gives us purpose. So that's what's important, I think, is to know that your life always has purpose, and that you are worthy of love, and that you are worthy of, and that you are able to love.
Just out of curiosity, I've heard debates on this from different ends of introductions with people. And some people who are loud and proud, what's up? I got bipolar, just so you know, and then they'll keep going. And then some people who want to get to that point where they feel like there's a trust established, and then they may bring that up. Just out of curiosity, wondering what your guys' take was on and what you do personally.
Okay, so your question is about disclosure. You know, like, you know, are you loud and proud in terms of sharing your diagnosis, or do you take having to be at a period of establishing trust first? Everybody's different. My personality is to be open. It's just who I am. So I've always been loud and proud no matter what. You know what I mean? It's just, and there were times in my life when I had a facade that I hid behind. And even now, I look a lot better than my mind might be, right? Because I have certain skills. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I like to speak out, because I like to challenge people's assumptions. Look, I have a mental illness. Am I scary? No. You know, it's to get people to understand something. But I understand not everybody's like that. And I've gotten a lot of flack from family members from writing certain things on my blog about, or from my sister, about my son or about our parents. She's like, you dissed our parents. I can't believe you put it in a book. And I'm like, well, I don't consider it disrespectful because I don't consider it being alcoholic or having a mental illness bad. You know, and I have compassion. Even though my parents' alcoholism or illness may have negatively affected me, I still love them and have compassion for them. So, and it took a lot of work to get there, but it's worth the work. You know, I wasn't like horribly abused. There's certain situations when I wouldn't say everybody has to forgive their parents if they've been, you know, molested or something like that. Everybody's individual. But in terms of a family with the multi-generational mental illness, you know, having been a therapist helped me have compassion, and have, you know, understanding myself helped me have compassion.
Seeing as this is being filmed, I'm going to say I'm loud and proud.
That's not pictures, that's
So, yeah, similar to Kit, I'm kind of a bold personality. I'm a Philly girl, was in the military, so it's kind of hard to shut me up. My biggest thing is I've always liked, I went through such a period of pathological lying without knowing I was pathologically lying, because the medication had me in a weird space, false reality. Honesty is very big for me. So if I meet somebody in the street, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, hi, Sarah, I have bipolar disorder, because he's going to be like, what? But if I'm friends with somebody, or somebody's in a role that my bipolar could directly affect my work, etc., then I'm very open about it, because I have to be honest. I can't be somebody who's so honest about everything and then lie about all those symptoms, all the reasons, all the things that bipolar cause, which is part of the reason I came out and just told everybody, because I was just tired of lying. And my experience is different. I think everybody, it just kind of depends on who you're around, the type of people. I'm somebody who doesn't care what people think. And part of that's just the life I've lived and my personality. And so somebody's like, oh, it says all these terrible things, like, well, she's bipolar. I'm gonna be like, okay, you know, great, have a good day, man. Like, so I think there's no right or wrong answer. You just have to do what is best with the space you have. If there's gonna be some harm, like if you're in a work environment and the people are saying they don't appreciate mental ill people and there's a lot of derogatory things, I personally would not sit there and then all of a sudden say, oh, I have bipolar disorder, you know.
I would.
Yeah, so it varies, but I think I get some flack for it. Like people tell me like it's not fair that you're this open about it because we can't because of our circumstance. First off, everybody's situation is different, so it's not fair to compare ever. But secondly, you have to do what's right for you. My world is different than other people's, and in my world, I can say that. I'm very fortunate for that. I would like to help other people create a world around them that they can be like that too if they so choose. But some people are quiet and meek or private people, and they don't need people to know that they have bipolar. And that's totally fine. It's just not me. I'm loud and proud. That's who I am as a person. But I know a lot of people who it takes a lot to open up, or they will never say anything. And I think that's because there's so much stigma around it. So people just don't feel comfortable. And that's why I'm an advocate. So I'm trying to make it so if people do want to tell it, they feel they can. Yeah, that's how I feel.
So I know you blog, so my question is, how do you handle people that are negative and come across them or say things that's negative or, anything like that to, because people are like that sometimes.
Yeah, you know what? I've had remarkably good luck.
Good.
I mean, people are almost 100% positive on my blog. And the only time I felt uncomfortable is when people started arguing anti-psychiatry stuff, because I'm not anti-psychiatry. And it's not that I don't think it's a valid issue, in that there have been past abuses, so that movement has done, influenced some really positive changes in how we treat people who are, in asylums or whatever. Although we need those. we need hospital beds. We need places for people to live safely with treatment options, but that's a whole other issue. So that's the only thing that I've really gotten, and it hasn't been attacks. I've been able to converse intelligently with people. So, yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much for